Good morning. This is VirtualPBX-admin training. Training lasts about an hour and a half to about an hour and 40 minutes. Basically depends on some load times. We do record these trainings, so if you can't stay for the whole time, you can always come back later, and that also helps you get a link and share it with other staff members who may also need to become system admins. Now, if you have any questions about a feature, feel free to make use of YouTube's chat feature, and I'll try to address the questions as I see them. Now, additionally, you'll see some links in the show notes. The first one is probably the more important one lately. That's our business SMS webinar series. It's basically every 2 weeks, and the next one is this coming Thursday. The other links are about some other features that I can't quite show you very clearly here on this stream, mostly because of limitations of my software. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Here you see our dash login screen, which is at dash.virtualpbx.com. We need 3 pieces of information for you to be able to log in. The first is your email address, right? Otherwise known as your username. This should be in all lowercase letters, right? Then we need your password, which is case sensitive. And then we need your account name, which is not case sensitive. This is typically your business name or organization name. Now, if you don't have your password or you can't remember it, down here at the bottom right, just above the sign-in bar, there's a forgot your info link. You can click on that, flips it around. We still need your email address, right? That's your unique identifier. And then we need one of these 2 pieces of information, right? We don't need both. And that is the account name, right? The business name, or a phone number on the account. And that phone number is an account phone number, right? Account phone number your customers call to dial into the system. You click on the reset password button here at the bottom. That will send you an email that has a link to log you into your user account page. Basically, you go there, change your password, it's going to log you out. If you try to navigate away from that page, the system will also log you out. But you'll be back here, so then you can enter your password. You have the option here to click on Remember Me as well, and then click on Sign In. And I must have had an extra character there. Let's see. There we go. Now, I'm using a test account. I've logged into it several times, so it's taking me directly to my dashboard page. If it's your first time logging in, then you're actually taken to your user account page. Now, you can always get there by clicking at your name on the top, towards the top right of the screen, or center right, yes. When you click on that, a big pop-up comes up, basically takes the whole screen and shows your user information, right? So you have your email address, click on the password box, and that's where you would change your password, and then click on Save Changes. Now, since I'm an admin, admins can also have these other settings over here on the left. So the account, the main thing that's typically changed here is the time zone and language, right? Time zone, so your company has a correct time zone. Language, it would be the display language of these web pages for your entire account. If you ever need to change the account name, you actually need to email our billing team, and that's billing@virtualpbx.com, mostly because they have to make sure everything is associated properly. Add-ons is new, and this will basically allow admins to add on additional features as we release them. Currently, the only one that you can add on is the text forward feature, but there'll be more coming in the future. Billing portal, that's where you would adjust your credit card information. And cancel account, you would just follow the instructions to go ahead and cancel the account. Once you're done over here, though, just click on the close box here towards the top right corner, and you'll be here on the dashboard page. And one thing I should point out, that first time you're logging in on the user account page, also over here on the left, under groups and under users, and on this dashboard page, you'll have the dash wizard come up, right? Basically pop-up windows telling you what certain things are. All right, so this main dashboard page on top, again, you click on your name at any time to get to that user account page. To the right, you have this D&D toggle. When you click on it, it'll move the toggle to the right and it'd be white, and that just means you're not accepting calls, right? Calls to your user will go to voicemail, and people will not be able to transfer calls to you. They'll say you're not available. Right, toggle it again, and then you're taking calls. If you don't have this toggle here, that usually means you've been assigned to an ACD queue or as part of the member of the call center, right? And this because the call center and the D&D toggle do not work well together, can cause problems. Next, I have this little phone icon. This opens up a new tab and takes it to webphone.virtualpbx.net. That page does require a login, and it just uses your normal Dash login. This allows you to use Chrome or Firefox on a computer to make and receive calls. Now, you have to have added that device to your user in order to make it work. It does count as a VoIP phone. Little chat icon here. This will actually launch the actually open up a new tab and take you to virtualtext.app. And basically, it allows you to make use of the virtual text app. Again, this feature would have to be enabled on your user to actually make use of it. The virtualtext.app site and the associated app has their own login, right? It's going to be different than your Dash login. Little question mark icon here. This opens up a chat window and allows you to talk to our support staff so they can help you with a particular feature or guide. The three little horizontal line icon here, that's our menu icon, and this will take you to other Dash features. The vast majority of our training will be on this first one here on the left, the dashboard, right? That's the majority of our features that we're going into. We'll touch on most of these others in some fashion. The call center and the reports and the webhooks, those I'm going to refer to the links in the show notes, just so you know ahead of time. And then this arrow to the icon to the right means log out. Now, if we go over to the left, we're currently on our dashboard, right? It has a little arrow here to the far right, pointing to the account name. Then we have our main number. Auto attendance, which is a plan-specific feature, basically gives you some additional features. Basically, it's if you have multiple accounts and you want them on the same overall account, I guess, actually, if you have multiple businesses, you want them on the same account, but those businesses have their own phone numbers and greetings, right? You would have them as an auto attendant, or you would use auto attendants for sub-menuing. Like you have one for English, two for Spanish, right? And then those two attendants have their own greetings in the appropriate language, and then their own routing options. Devices shows all your devices on the account. Greetings shows all your media files, right? Main greetings, voicemail greetings, hold music files. Groups, hunt groups or ring groups, right? So departments. Numbers shows all your numbers on the account. Users, all your users who are making and receiving calls. Voicemail boxes. Text forward, if you want to make use of text forwarding. Text numbers, which is allowing more use of virtual text. Call logs, showing your call history. And then feature codes, which allows your VoIP phone users to access Dash features directly from their VoIP phones. Here in the center, total users. I have 8 users on this account. That means these are people who make and receive calls. Most of our accounts are based on a per user basis. So the more you have, the higher your bill. Then I have total devices, 14, and a little breakdown here. Now, Dash was designed with VoIP phones in mind, first and foremost. If you don't already know, VoIP stands for Voice over Internet Protocol, right? Sounds fancy. All it really means is using your internet connection to make and receive calls. Now, this first device here, a soft phone, right? Software application that uses your internet connection to make and receive calls, right? So it's a VoIP device. This includes the VirtualPBX soft phone app, as well as any third-party soft phones you might be using. Then I've got cell phones. So on Dash, we can route calls to a cell phone number or a landline number, right? So say we route it to your cell phone rings, you can pick up, you can answer that call. Keep in mind is that once you pick up a call that goes to your cell phone number, you can't transfer that call to another staff member on your account, right? That's basically an endpoint. So that you would either have to have someone call them back or the customer would have to call back in. All right, SIP phone. This is a piece of hardware, right? It's a physical device, probably sits on someone's desk, has an Ethernet cable to get out to the internet or to get to your router, then to get to the internet. But basically, it has a handset, right? You can pick it up, dial numbers on it, make and receive calls. So SIP is a subtype of VoIP, right? VoIP general term. There are several different kinds of protocols that VoIP providers can use. We use SIP, so when you're shopping, you want to make sure it's SIP compliant or compatible. That's fairly common from what I've seen. And then down here, I have the web phone. That's that Chrome or Firefox browser-based phone on a computer. Unregistered devices, I have 0, and that means just devices I have disabled in my dashboard. All right, so like I've temporarily taken it out of service for whatever reasons. Then I have total numbers, 11. Right, your account includes at least some number of phone numbers as part of your monthly plan price. If you just signed up with this, check the pricing page. It will have it there. And if you go over that, it's typically $1.99 per number. But if you're on an older account, you'd want to talk to our account services team. We've got a couple of breakdowns here. First up is assigned numbers and spare numbers, right? Assigned number, you're using it, right? Someone can dial it and expect to speak to someone or leave a voicemail, join a conference, or be sending a fax. Spare numbers, you're not currently using it, but it still counts towards your allotment of numbers, right? So like you're about to expand to a new market, you got a number in that new city that has a different area code, so that way you can start preparing all your marketing materials, right? Then the other breakdown here, I have USDID and US toll-free. US toll-free is US Canada toll-free, right? An 800 number, 888, all the way down to 833. USDID, that just means a US local phone number, right? So if you have a phone number in San Jose, California, or if you have a number in Chicago, Illinois, right? They both would be under USDID. You can have international phone numbers. If you're interested in that, you need to email our porting team. That's porting at virtualpbx.com. They need to know the city and country that you're interested in getting a number in. They will let you know if it's possible to get the number and if there are any additional requirements. Those additional requirements are from the host country, right? We don't control that. Conference bridges, right here, I have 3. That means 3 of my users are hosting or moderating a conference. You actually can't enable that feature until you've added the conference number to your account. Now we'll go over here to the top right. I have my main number box where I have 2 phone numbers, right? Both in area code 512. These are your main contact numbers, right? Or the default numbers your customers call to reach your system. These numbers behave the same way, right? They're going to the same location. They're going to have the same main greeting. Conference number. This is the phone number everyone joins to or calls to join a conference. This includes your staff members, right? Cell phone, landline, VoIP phone, doesn't matter. You just call that number. Then the system will prompt you to enter the conference room number and the PIN number. Fax box number, you can have one main fax box number, and this is your inbound fax number. It also allows you to set up your fax box to allow for outbound faxing, as well as who's receiving the inbound faxes. We have the company directory here. There's 2 options, CSV and Softone. CSV just downloads a spreadsheet file, so you can use your favorite spreadsheet software and take a look at, it's gonna have like your staff members' names, their extension numbers, and their devices. The Softphone directory, that's for use with the VirtualPBX desktop Softphone app, right? So if you're using our Softphone app on a Windows or Mac PC, you can download this file, upload it to the Softphone app on that computer, and that will allow you to see the status of the other VirtualPBX softphones on your account, right? You can see if they're on a call or not. Great if that's the only device your staff is using. If you have a mix of devices in use, then you're not gonna be able to tell what, if my coworker Mike is using his Yealing phone, I'm not gonna be able to tell that he's on that call, right? I can only tell if he's using his soft phone. VirtualPBX Store, this is a link, opens up a new tab and takes you to store.virtualpbx.com, where you can order things like a VoIP phone, among other things. The account realm, every account has its own account realm. It's used in a couple different things. The first is to program any third-party soft phones, right? There's 3 pieces of information our system gives you to program or provision a third-party soft phone, and the account realm is one of them. And the other thing it's used for is to send out a fax, right? So on Dash, to send out a fax is actually via email. So you don't actually have to log into your Dash account. Basically, you just use your email address that is associated with your user. In the to field, you put the plus sign, the number one, the area code and phone number, put the little @ symbol, and then your account realm. Then you attach a PDF or TIFF file and click send, right? So the system looks at the to field, it looks at the from field, it looks at the attachment. It doesn't look at the subject line, it does not look at the body. So if you type anything in those two fields, that information doesn't get transmitted as part of the fax. It only transmits the PDF or TIFF file. Right, up here at the top, across where it says VPBX New Hire Sandbox, it says caller ID. Gonna click on that. Expands out to a big old box. Now, this pull down allows you to select any of your main numbers, right? So I can choose any of those 512 numbers. Whichever one I select becomes my default number, right? In terms of, let's say, for my VoIP phones, when I pick up and make an outbound call, by default, it's going to use this 512 number as its outbound caller ID. Next up, add the company caller ID name. This is an optional field in the box here to the right. You can enter up to 15 characters, including special characters and spaces. And that's what we associate with your phone number in terms of the outbound caller ID. Again, this is completely optional. Then we have the company emergency information, or E911. Wants a North American address here. If you're in Canada, just know that you're in the zip code field, put your postal code. And in the state, put your 2-character province abbreviation. Now, once you click Save Changes, right, it saves it to the system. If you entered information in the company caller ID name field, that information gets transmitted to the other carriers who support this feature. It takes them about 3 business days to update their servers. Something to know about the CNAME feature. Not every carrier supports it. So when you make an outbound call, right, your call can route to anywhere from half a dozen, maybe up to a dozen carriers before it reaches its destination. So each one of the carriers will need to support that feature for it to make it all the way through. But probably more important than that is that receiving carrier, right, the last carrier, they have final say, right? So they see the phone number, they see the caller ID information name that we're sending. Their first option, they can let it all go through. Shows up on the phone on their network, everybody's happy. Or they can get that information and go, oh, no, we're going to look up that number in our own database, which may not match what we have access to, and put their own caller ID name that they find in their database and associated with that number, right? Which means not everyone's happy in that case. And then the last option is, right, they see that information and they say, no, we're only sending the phone number through. That last option is the most common response or reaction that the cell phone carriers do, right? They get the call, they get the phone number, they pass that through, they don't pass the CNAME through. And these are the carriers that I've looked into for the cell phone providers, right? They want to charge their subscribers an additional monthly fee to have that feature show up on their cell phones. And most people tend not to want to pay extra to their cell phone providers. So basically, if you're making test calls of the CNAME feature, you don't want to default to test with a cell phone. Old music on Dash, you can upload your own media files, excuse me. Click the upload button here and click browse to find a MP3 or WAV file, .wav, to upload, right? You want to make sure it's up to 1 megabyte or less. To save you some space in terms of file size, I do recommend recording in mono and not in stereo. And that way that gives you a little bit more time. A 1 megabit MP3 is roughly 5 minutes in that case. And then you click on Save Changes. Once it uploads, this becomes default hold music for all your staff members. Now, what that means is call comes into the system, reaches your staff member. They pick up their VoIP phone, they start talking to the customer, and then they have to press hold on their VoIP phone. Once they do that, that's when this media file plays, right? Up until then, the customer is likely hearing the ringing sound. Now, hours is part of main number, which we'll get to shortly, but part part of main numbers is setting up where the call is going to go. You need to have those destinations in place first. So let's now go to users over here on the left, right? So these are your people on the account who make and receive calls. People at the blue suit icon, these are your system admins, right? So they can make all these changes that we're talking about. Little gray person icon, that means they're just a standard user, right? They have very limited access. Like they can check their voicemail. They have a user portal, which they can always access. They might have access to the call center if you've added them to the call center. And that's about it. They're not going to see all of this. Up here at the top is where you add new users. You basically fill out the form, right? So first name, last name, the system wants some sort of data here, right? I have seen customers literally put A and A, or A and period, right? These two fields. The email address used for login needs to be unique for each user, right? So you cannot reuse an email address amongst multiple staff members. It will cause problems. Well, normally it'll give you an error and not allow you to create it. But if you do eventually create a user with, or two users with the same email address, the system won't know which one you're actually logging into necessarily, and that can cause problems. Password, you create a password for the user. Main extension number, here you enter in whatever extension number you want. Now, if you just signed up with this, you'll have one user already in place, but it won't have an extension number yet. So you would have to enter that in. So this system started off with extension 1000. It's telling me the next available in that series is extension 1011. One thing to know about the email address used for login, that's how the system communicates with the user, right? So password resets, go to this email address. Voicemail notifications, go to this email address. Create a voicemail box with this user. This is by default, this is checked, and basically all it does is when you click create user or create user and add another, the system automatically creates a voicemail box for this user, right? It's intrinsically tied to the user. So let's say you created a user, you add a VoIP phone, it gets registered. That person can then pick up their VoIP phone, dial *98 on their VoIP phone, and then click call or send. That will log them directly into the voicemail box you just created for them. The system will then walk them through creating a PIN number for their voicemail box, as well as setting up their voicemail box name and voicemail box greeting. Right, the voice box name is what the system uses for the dial by name directory, their smart PBX directory. Right, obviously the voicemail greeting is what it will play back when a caller gets to the voicemail box. Here's the option to be included in the user directory. Right, you just put a check mark here if you want them in, or leave it blank if you don't. You can always change this later. This is an option to send emails to an alternate address. So if you don't want the communication from the system to go to that email address used for login, like let's say you set up a dummy email address for whatever reasons, you click a box here and then enter a second email address in this field, and that's where the system communications will go. Again, you can change this at any time. Down here, to me, this is fairly important, send credentials to the user. Right? So once you click on create user, with this last option checked, the system will automatically create an email, send it to the new user, welcoming them to Dash. It should have their login information and links, right, in terms of how to get to where to log into. If you only need to add one user, click on create user. If you have to add more, create user and add another. Once a user is created, you can click on their name. Right, so you can always change their name if you need to. Here is where you could change their credentials. If you click on it, again, you can change their email address. You can change their password, type it in twice. You also have the option here to send them the password reset email. Like if they can never remember the passwords you create for them, like here, create it yourself. Although they should have been able to do that by just clicking on their name as well. Here you can change the voicemail box PIN number. Just enter a 4-digit number and click Save Changes. You can also do that under the Voicemail Boxes tab on the left. Here's the option to send to an alternate address. And here's to include in the user directory. Over here to the right, little person icon. This pull down allows you to change a user into an admin or an admin into a user. If you're the only admin on the account, please don't change yourself to a user. Little time icon here. This is the a time zone for the user, right? So that way their voicemail timestamps are correct. Little flag icon here. This allows you to change the display language for the user. You have English, French, German, or Russian. Ringing timeout. This is the default amount of time the system will offer calls to the devices on the user. In this case, 20 seconds. 20 seconds, plenty of time to send calls to a landline or to a VoIP phone, typically speaking. If this user is only making use of a cell phone, you'd want to increase this to at least 30 seconds, maybe as much as 45. And that's because it simply takes longer to route a call to a cell phone than it does to a landline, right? Landline, the telecom company knows exactly where that phone is. Whereas calls to a cell phone, the cell phone provider has to find the cell phone first, and then they pass the call through. And that little delay is why on the system, you would need more time. All right, extension numbers. You can have users have multiple extension numbers. Again, if you're that first user, right, you just signed up with this and you're watching this, you would want to come to your extensions tab here and add an extension number to yourself, and then click on Save Changes, and that will be the basis for any future extension number recommendations. Users can have their own phone numbers. You have the option here from add from spare or buy, right? Buy numbers means you're adding a brand new number to the account. It's not already here. Adding for spare means you had a spare number and you're making use of it. It's how you reuse phone numbers, right? Like if you had a main number, you're like, okay, I don't want this as a main number. I only want the two. So you unassigned any existing numbers, and then you can come here and I can add this spare number, right? This toll-free number here, add selected, and then click Save Changes. So now I here have two phone numbers. Likewise, if I don't I don't want that toll-free number on one person, let me just unassign that, Save Changes. And that 855 number is still on my account, right? I can assign it someplace else. I just removed it from its current location. Right. Buy numbers, you have the option here for local and toll-free. Toll-free, pretty easy. Choose the toll-free prefix you like most. Click on search, and the system will provide a list of phone numbers. Now, this list of phone numbers is referred to as a dynamic list, meaning you're competing with other people in real time, technically. There's usually not that many people grabbing phone numbers at the same time. But we like to tell you that because let's say I just click add here. Right now I can add multiple, right? This system will keep listing numbers. So I can add like two numbers right now, right? They're both here. I can remove them if I want to by clicking on the little trash icon. Now, let's say I get to this point and then my boss comes in and said, hey, I need you in this meeting now, right? I drop everything. So I walk over to the meeting and, the meeting goes through. I eventually get out of the meeting. I come back here. It's possible that while I was in the meeting, or even while I'm talking right now, someone could have purchased one or both of these numbers, right? Because just adding it to my cart doesn't do anything. It doesn't reserve the numbers in any fashion. But once I click buy, now the system is verifying that those numbers were truly available. And if so, it's adding them to my account, and in this case, this location, and then activating them. Now, you got this little gear icon here to the right. This is where you can update caller ID for each of these numbers, right? So you can edit the outbound caller ID name, as well as turn on the ability to accept inbound caller ID name, right? Which I typically recommend. It tends to help your staff. E911, each phone number can have its own E911 address, right? So and the reason for that is because we realize people are going to be working multiple locations. You can have staff members spread out, across the world, right? But so E911 is for North America. So for any of your North American staff, you can have the address here on any given phone number be associated to one particular address. You can then assign this information to a VoIP device so that for the purposes of E911 only, this is the address that gets transmitted to emergency services, right? Any other call, it doesn't matter or doesn't show up. And then next up is prepend. This is a VoIP phone feature. This allows you to add text in front of the caller ID that shows up on your staff members' VoIP phones to give them that helps them identify what the call might be about ahead of time. I'm going to go ahead and unassign these numbers. Also, the main thing to know on a phone number that's on a user or on a group, uh, these phone numbers are available 24/7. Right? They don't have hours of operation. Right. So next up, we have devices. Right. You can add from spare, just reusing a device, or new. First up is SIP phone. Right. This is that physical piece of hardware. You have these manufacturers to choose from. Right. Some have a lot of phones. Right. Some only have like half a dozen or so. In all cases, you find the make and model of phone you want to work with. You need to give it a name, right? Bob's phone, or in this case, Dante's phone, right? Or the location, like break room phone or warehouse phone. Then we need the MAC address for the phone. This is unique to each device. Typically a sticker on the back of the phone, or if the phone's plugged in, you can typically go into its status or basic settings and get the MAC address there. You would enter it here, and then you click on Create Device. And then you click here, click on Save Changes. Then you want to come back into the device, so click on this name here. Go to Advanced, then select Miscellaneous. Where it says Allow Reprovision, click Unlock, and then you're going to click Save Changes, and likely save changes again here as well. Then, as far as our dashboard is concerned, you're done. However, you need to access that phone's web user interface, the web UI, and you need to basically you're giving it a URL to go to get this config file. For the specifics of that, you want to go to our support pages and do a search for auto provisioning. Right? You'll see a VoIP phones auto provisioning. I believe it's in the section getting started with VoIP. That's going to have the screenshots of these various manufacturers, the proper syntax for that URL, and usually a couple other settings just to verify. Next up is cell phone. And actually here, we'll go up here because I know I have a cell phone added here. All right, so you give it a name, and then you enter the number, right? +1 area code and phone number. No spaces, dashes, or parentheses. And then you click on Save Changes, right? And then, or actually, when you first add it, you're clicking on Create Device, and then Save Changes in the box here. Now I'm going to go under Advanced and Options, and this is the default setup for any new cell phone or landline that's added to your account on the user, right? So call comes in, gets offered to the cell phone here, cell phone rings, you pick up, and the system will play back a message saying, this is a forwarded call, please press 1. When you press 1, you're telling the system, yes, you're there, and yes, you want to take the call, right? It's basically an audio way of knowing, hey, this is a work call. And that's fine if it's going to someone who can answer the call. Now, let's say you've actually contracted with an automated answering service, right? So they gave you a phone number, say, hey, just send out calls to this phone number. We'll handle your after-hours calls. So you add that phone number as a cell phone device on your account. Well, but generally speaking, cell phone or automated answering service doesn't know when to press 1, right? It doesn't have fingers. So what you would want to do is come here under Advanced Options, and it's where it says allow use of cell phone voicemail. Put a check mark here, and click on Save Changes. So now, when we send a call to this phone number, when we hear that pickup tone, we connect the call, right? There's no message about being a forwarded call or pressing 1. Then your automated answering service can then handle the call, and everyone's happy. Likewise, if this is actually your cell phone that you're doing this to, if your cell phone voicemail picks up, that's still a pickup tone. So we connect the call. So that inbound caller can end up on your personal cell phone's voicemail versus your account voicemail. Right? Some people really want that. Some people really don't. Another thing that can come up is this, keep original caller ID. So customer Mary calls into the system, reaches my cell phone. On my cell phone's display, I see customer Mary's phone number. I don't recognize it. I've got too many robodialers, and especially going into next year, we're going to have, in the US, we're going to have a lot of political calls. So if I don't recognize the number, I typically let it go to voicemail. To avoid that, i.e. to make sure I'm maximizing sales or customer engagement, I can uncheck this. And what that means is when customer Mary calls into my system, right after I click save and save changes, on my cell phone's display, I will see this 512 number, right? So hopefully I'll recognize one of my main company numbers, say, oh, this is a work-related call. Let me take it. All right. Next up is soft phone. Now, whenever you add a soft phone or a web phone to your account, you're going to get this warning message. It's basically about wireless VoIP technology and that dialing 911. Etc. So make sure you read it at least once. Click close. And now here, it starts off as a third-party soft phone, right? So you can give it a name. If you're going to make use of someone else's soft phone app, then you'd want to copy and paste the SIP username. Click on the SIP password box here. Copy and paste that. Do not change it. Here's the account room again, right? These are the three pieces of information you would need to provision that third-party soft phone. Now, if you want to make use of the VirtualPBX soft phone, then down here below where it says view configuration file, you'll see a toggle where it says, right now, it says use third-party application. If you click on that, it flips it. Now it says use VirtualPBX application. You give it a name, you click on create device, and then you click on save changes. Once you click on save changes, the user will get an email saying that their VirtualPBX soft phone is ready and will have their login information for the app. Now, this option, right, saying that they use VirtualPBX application, that only shows up when you add a soft phone directly to a user here, right? If you go to the devices tab over on the left and try to add a soft phone, you can only add a third-party soft phone. All right, user features. Oh, wait, oops, web phone, sorry. New device, web phone, right? You still get that warning message. You just need to give it a device name and then click on create device and then save changes. The web phone, right, uses the dash login information. So it needs to be associated with the user in order for it to work, right? So you could add a web phone to the devices page and then move it to the user, but it's just easier just to add it directly to the user, in my opinion. All right, now let's go to user features. First up is caller ID name. This is for users that have their own phone number assigned to them. What this feature does is allows them to use their assigned phone number as their outbound caller ID instead of the main phone number. All right, so you would click on, select the phone number on the user, and then save changes. And then going forward, whenever they make an outbound call from their VoIP devices, the phone number that's associated with the user is their outbound caller ID. Virtual text, you turn it on, you choose a phone number on the account, typically a main number, auto attendant number, or a phone number assigned directly to the user. And that allows this user to make use of texting. Right, you would just click on save changes. Now, if you don't see this feature on your account, you're going to want to contact our account services team. They're the ones who have to enable that feature. They will also talk to you about SMS registration and the steps involved in that. Voicemail box. This is a default setup in terms of we're attaching the message to the email notification. Right, the email we send it to is the email address that's been associated with the user, right? The email address used for login. Now, voicemail boxes can hold up to 100 messages. After that, they are full and cannot accept any more. Now, by default, there's 3 ways to listen to your voicemails and 2 ways to manage your voicemail box, right? So one of the ways to listen to it is via this email notification, right? You get an email, has the date, the time, the phone numbers involved, the voicemail box number, and then an MP3 file. Now, that doesn't allow you to manage your voicemail box. So you can go into, every user can log into dash.virtualpbx.com and go to the user portal and view their voicemails there, and they have the option to delete. You can also do this over the phone, right? So you can call into your main number, and when you hear like that main greeting play, you can hit *98, or actually *97 from any phone, or *98 directly from a VoIP phone. And the system will ask you for your voicemail box number and then the PIN number. You're going to listen to your messages over the phone, and you'll be given an option to delete the messages there. Now, if you have a very busy voicemail box, right? That, let's say you use it for a lot of your groups or whatnot, so you don't want it to ever become full because that will unnerve your customers. You can then do this option here, which is delete after notification. So once the email goes out with the attachment, the system deletes that voicemail from the voicemail box, so that way it never becomes full. But then the only way to check the voicemail is via email. All right, follow me. This is for users with multiple devices. Right, this allows you as an admin to set up how their devices will ring. So when you first enable it, it looks like this, right? And the system basically wants you to tell it, what devices am I making use of? You uncheck the devices you want to use, and then you click and drag this green bar to the right to give it a ring time. Now, along the top here, these are timestamps. You can edit this last one. Right? It defaults to 120 seconds, but you can say, hey, I just want it to be 60. You can also click distribute. And so now it's going to ring in this order, right? So my web phone and then the soft phone. I can click and drag to change the order and then click distribute again. So now it's going to ring my soft phone first and then my web phone. Likewise, I can include this cell phone device. Actually, I can just click distribute. And I can give my cell phone a little extra time, for instance. And then click on Save Changes. Oh, one thing about Follow Me, if this user is part of a group and a call comes to the user via the group, that group call ignores the Follow Me settings. It's just going to ring all of David's devices at once. Right, so this only works for calls that get routed to my extension number, for example. All right, fax box. You can choose to have users have their own fax box if you want to. You have the option here of selecting a spare number, buying a new number, or assigning a new extension number. Now, I recommend making use of a phone number, as that gives you the user the most versatility. If you use an extension number, while that saves you the money of adding a phone number, potentially, it limits what the person can do in terms of, if you assign an extension number, right, this person can only ever receive a fax. Right, they won't be able to send out, because when they try to send out, the system will use their extension number as their outbound caller ID, which will fail because it's not long enough. Also, you potentially limit who can send them a fax. Right, some of these electronic fax services don't have a way to add an extension number. Right, they just say, hey, enter the phone number, send fax. So again, a potential limitation there. Conference bridge. This allows a user to become a moderator for a conference. You click up here to enable. And then you just need to set up a PIN number for the user. And then click on Save Changes. In the user portal, the staff member can go into the user portal and change the PIN numbers themselves. Call forwarding. You have off, on, or failover mode. Your staff members can turn call forwarding off or on their own, either in the user portal or via their VoIP phones directly. Failover mode is something you would have to set up for them, and that's in an instance where if their VoIP phone goes offline and a call comes to that user and that time, then with failover mode on, you can enter in a phone number, right? +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. And when that call comes in, right, VoIP phone's offline, the system will automatically forward the call to this phone number you designated. And then you click on Save Changes. Now, if you have staff members multiple devices, right, and one of those devices is their cell phone, you don't need to make use of this feature at all. Right, as long as it's one of their active follow me settings, or even if you don't have follow me enabled at all, right, as long as it's one of their active devices, the call will eventually get to their cell phone. Customized call recording. So on Dash, you have the ability to record calls. First, you click Enable, and when you click Enable, it will look like this. Basically, you have to tell the system what calls do you want to record. Right? Inbound internal, coworker call. Right? So Dante called me. Right? Inbound external, customer Mary called me. Right? So outbound internal is I called Dante, and then outbound external is I called customer Mary. So we normally see something like that, or all four. Now, your account includes some amount of data storage as part of your monthly plan price. You can go to the pricing page to see what's allocated. If you have a high volume of calls and you're recording every call, you might want to look at AWS storage, right? So if you have an AWS account, then you can link your Dash account to that AWS account, so then have AWS store your calls. You'd want to talk to our account services team about that, because that's an integration that they have to turn on, and they can walk you through that setup as well. For heavy call volume customers, storing the call recordings on AWS tends to be much more cost effective. Music on hold, you can click to enable. This allows you to upload hold music files to particular users. Right, so we did hold music on the dashboard. That's just for everybody in general. This will supersede that on a per user basis. So like if you want your sales team to have a particular hold music that talks about, specials that are going on or special promotions, then you would enable this, upload the MP3 or .wav file under 1 megabyte, and then click upload icon and then save changes. Do not disturb. When you enable this, that means the user is not getting calls, right? Calls to them are going to voicemail or will skip them in a group. Hot desking is a VoIP phone feature. You click to enable, and you give it a hot desk ID. I usually just, if you make use of 4-digit extensions, just make it the hot desk ID number as well. So this is for a shared office environment or hybrid scheduling where staff members aren't going to be at the same VoIP phone every day that they're in the office. So I come into the office on Tuesday, I sit down at desk number 2, I pick up the VoIP phone there, I hit *11. That turns on hot desking. I enter my hot desk ID. The system will then say calls will now be sent to you on this device. So the rest of my workday, when someone's trying to reach my extension number or in my calls for my groups or what have you, it's going to ring on the phone that I'm sitting at. At the end of my day, I pick up the phone and I hit *12 to turn off hot desking. Right. Next time you go in the office, sit at desk number 7, same thing, pick up the phone, *11, hot desk ID, calls come to me at that phone. All right, next up is groups. So groups are departments, right? Sometimes referred to as ring groups or hunt groups. Up here at the top, you click on add group. You need to give it a name. You need to give it an extension number. Then you click and drag your staff members that you want to be in the group. So for instance, let's call this and then I click on Create Group. So here's my group that I just created. I click on its name, right? I can change the name at any time. Here I've got the group call attempts. Little arrows here to the right, I can increase or set it back to 1. This is the number of times the system will offer a call to the members in the group. All right, so right now I'm at 3, so let's change that to 2, and then I click Save Changes. All right, so now any call that comes into this group offers it to my staff members 2 times. Now here I've got the members box. I click on that. Here are my 3 members. In fact, I can add more if I want to. So let's go ahead and we'll add 2 more people here. Right, so now when a call comes in right now, it rings to all of them for 20 seconds. I can increase these bars so it rings them all for 120 seconds. Right, so whoever picks up the call first gets it. Now, in this kind of setup, the concern that can happen is, right, everyone's phone's ringing at the same time. And let's say MJ and Gene pick up the call at the same time, right? Well, the system has to decide who's actually getting that call, right? So it picks one of them, right? So that person connects to Gene. And MJ's sitting there going, hey, I got dead air. So he may think there's a problem, right? Because he was offered a call and there's no one there. Now, if people are in an office, that's pretty easy to hear. Oh, I hear Gene on a call. She must have got the call, right? Whereas if you have people working remotely, you may not be able to tell, or they may not be able to tell, and they think there's something wrong. So that's something to be aware of. You can check that in the call log, especially if your staff members has the phone numbers involved. You can also, up here at the top, you have your total ring time, right? So you can adjust that. Right now, it's like, let's say I can change it to 180, right? So I can adjust it to be longer, or I can click distribute. Now, in this setup, right, the first call comes to David, right? Comes to me. So call comes in, my phone rings, I pick up, I'm helping the customer. If a second call comes in while I'm still on that first call, the call is still offered to me. It doesn't skip me. All right, so it rings me for about 36 seconds, and then it goes to MJ. Right, so now MJ and I are both on calls. Third call comes in. Well, it doesn't skip us, right? So then after 72 seconds, so over a minute, almost a minute and 15 seconds, then Jean will start getting, her phone will start ringing. So if you have a busy group, you might want to do something more like this where you have more overlap. So that way these later callers are not getting long hold times. Now, obviously, 3 calls have come in and then I finish my call and the 4th call comes in, I'll get the next call, right? But that's why it might be better to have more of an overlap or that blast ring setup. Now, let's say I get told I have a big project, so I need to be last in this group. So you click and drag, move me to the bottom, I click distribute, and now I'm at the very end. And then you would click on Save Changes. All right, groups can have multiple extension numbers if you want them to. All right, groups can also have their own phone numbers, right? Add from spare or buy new. And then there's group features. So ring back, call comes into the group, starts ringing your staff members' phones. That ringing sound gets piped back to your inbound caller. And if you don't want that sound, then you click this ring back feature to enable, and you select a media file from the pull down, or you upload a .wav or .mp3 file, again, recorded in mono, under 1 megabyte. Click the up arrow icon and then click Save Changes, and this file will play instead of that ringing sound. Now, the media file, the length of that media file should match or exceed your total ring time in your group, right? So the default for a group is 120 seconds, so you want to make sure the media file plays for at least 120 seconds. Next action, up here, click to enable. And what this is if no one picks up the call, what do you want the system to do with the call? You have a pull down here where you can choose where to go. The most common is to go to a voicemail box, but you can send it to a specific user. You can send it to a different ring group, right? You can send it to a specific device. You can send it to a call queue if you have them, or you can send it back to your main menu. Allow call forward. If you enable this, that means your users can make use of call forwarding. But again, if they have their cell phones as devices on their user, then you don't need to make use of this feature. And then we have caller ID prepend. This is again for the VoIP phone users. You can have additional text or digits that appear on your staff members' VoIP phones as part of the caller ID display. I usually we recommend using one or the other, not both, as that can be confusing. And one thing to bear with if you add additional numbers, right? If your staff members like click on that phone number with the additional numbers show up as part of the caller ID number of the inbound caller. So if they try to click on it, they'll get an error because there'll be too many digits when they try to call back versus they just dial the number. All right, so we now have users and groups. So let's go to main number now. So clicking on main number, main company numbers. These are your main numbers. You can buy here or add from spare. Got the little gear icon here, so you can update the caller ID, E911, etc. You have your office hours strategy. So you can have 24-hour open office right here, or custom office hours. For custom office hours, for each day of the week you're open, put a check mark in front of that day and set your open hours in 24-hour or military time. You also have the option down here to have your system closed for lunch at the same time every day that you're open. And then click on Save Changes. Office holidays, if you're closed for holiday, put a check mark here. And then over here to the far right, under Add Holiday, you have single day, date range, or advanced. Oops, did not mean to do that. All right, so single day is like I have here, or whoops, for Christmas Day, excuse me. All right, give it a name, choose the month, choose the date, save changes. Date range, like I have here for holiday, give it a name, a start date, and an end date, save changes. Advanced is like I have here for Memorial Day, right? Gave it a name, choose the month. In this pull down here, you have first through fifth, as well as last, and then the day of the week, and then save changes. Notice that there's no year indicator here, so just be aware of that in terms of any single day date for any holidays that shift dates. And you can always hit the trash icon to remove a holiday and then click Save Changes. Then we have incoming call handling. So for my two main numbers, how do I want my system to handle calls during my open hours, during my after hours, and during my holidays? If I had actually included lunch hours, the lunch hours tab would be here in between open and after hours. So in this case, during my open hours, I have calls coming into my virtual receptionist. I click on the virtual receptionist to open it up. So here's my main menu on the left. And then down here, I click on Add Route. And this allows me to create the different menu options that my staff or that my customers dial on their phone to get to my staff members. Right, 1 for sales, 2 for support, that sort of thing. So this pull down, you have 0 through 9 plus the star key and the default action. Right, that's first pull down. The second pull down is the locations on the system. Right, whether that's your smart PBX directory, one of your staff members, right? So you've had to add users in order to have this as an option. Call queues if you're making use of queues. Any group that you've added is an option. Any devices that you added, so you can have a menu option go to a specific phone. Not always recommended, but that just depends on your use case. You can have a menu option go to a media file. Now, the downside of that is once the media file stops playing, the call ends, right? So some people would use this for like hours of operation or directions. Then over here on the right, we have our greetings, right? This is where you tell people thank you for calling. And then you give directions in terms of how to navigate through your phone system. Right, text to speech, you type in what you want to say, you click update, save, and save changes. The text to speech greeting is limited to 250 characters, not words. Does not count spaces. it's a computerized or robotic voice. You can have as many of these as you want. However, there's no provision for you to name the file. And so in this case, the system will name it for you. And in this specific case, it's going to be main open hours menu TTS. So you can easily have several files called main open hours menu TTS, and that can be confusing later from any of the pull down options. So if you make use of text-to-speech greetings, which is common for like people just starting up, then what I recommend is after you create one, over here on the left, click on greetings, find that main open hours menu TTS file and rename it. Just like main greeting one at the very least, right? Just so you have something to help you identify it. You can upload your own file, right? Find the file on your system, .wave.mp3 recorded in mono, then click update, save, and save changes. You can choose from an existing recording. You can see the main open hours menu TTS name here. This pull down shows all your media files, main greetings, hold music files or ringback files, voicemail greeting files. So that's why you want to use names that you can recognize quickly. You can record it over the phone. Now, by default, the system wants you to use a phone that's registered to the account. And what that means is a VoIP phone, right? Because that way the system knows it's tied to this account, so it's safe to use. If you don't want to do that, or you can't, then like you want to use your cell phone. Under here, under settings, and where it says allow outside recording, turn that on, click save, save changes. That allows any phone number to call in and record a main greeting over the phone. Now, when you do that, you still need to enter a PIN number. So if you just signed up with us, right, and you dial your main number, you'll get a message saying that the greeting for this menu has not been recorded yet. It will then prompt you for this PIN number. Let's say you started off with text-to-speech greeting, right? And then when you called in, you're like, oh, I don't like the sound of that. I'd rather use my own voice. Well, you can still call into your main greeting and enter the PIN number, right? The system will then flip over into walking you through how to record it over the phone. Now, this PIN number is specific to this time of day, right? So it only works during my open hours. If I call in on Saturday, if I enter this PIN number, it's going to give me an invalid message, right? Or invalid entry message. When you record it over the phone, if you don't have a recording in place, right, it will name it for you, which then you can go back into the greetings tab and rename it to something you recognize. If you had that text-to-speech greeting in place, the file name stays the same. So main open hours menu TTS, that file name stays there, but the content gets overwritten with your voice. Professional recording services, when you click order, this will open up a new tab and take you to Snap Recordings. You can use them to have a professionally done recording. Right? They have like 100 voice actors and actresses to choose from. They bill you via credit card. They send you the file via email, and then you would just upload your own recording. All right, settings. First up here, number of retries on missed dial. This is how many times your inbound caller can make a mistake. Right. Typically, I recommend anywhere from 1 to 3. Tends to be enough for most people. Right. So when you have 1, that means they have 2 total attempts. Right. They have that first call or that first attempt. They listen to the greeting, and let's say in this case they press 5. And then the system says, oh, that's not a valid entry, plays the greeting again. And let's say they press 5 a second time. Well, now that's their last attempt. So in that case, the system would, say if I add a menu option here, if I have a default action, it would send the caller to the default action. I click X and remove that. If I don't have one, then the system will end the call and say, we did not recognize your entry, goodbye. Dialing timeout, this is how much time the system listens for an additional button press after the first button is pressed. Right? So caller calls in, presses 5. The system, in this case, listens for 1 second. It says, oh, that's it. No menu option 5, no extension number 5. Either it sends a default action or ends the call. Now, I usually recommend something like 3 or 5 to 5 range. The system defaults to 10, which I think is too long. All right. Allow dialing extensions. By default, this is on, and that just means if a customer enters in a valid extension number, the system will transfer the call to that extension. If you turn this off, that means your inbound caller can only press these 3 menu options. Anything else will return an invalid entry. And to suppress the playing of invalid entry. So I mentioned this, right? If after that last attempt that the caller makes, the system says we don't recognize your entry and says either goodbye or transfers the call to your default action. If you don't want that message to play, then you need to turn this on, right? You're turning on suppressing of that file. And then the call would simply be transferred, or the call would simply end. Any changes you make to your main menu, your meetings, or greetings, or your settings, you need to click Save here. And then you need to click Save Changes here under Incoming Call Handling. So you're clicking Save twice. Right, so my after hours, I have calls coming in. I'm offering it to my support group and then to my virtual receptionist. This is a pull down. You can select basically anything on your account. Right? It's designed as a live operator answer. So typically designed to send calls to a user first, or a group, or a queue. Right? So basically you're giving staff members a chance to answer the call first. If they can't, then that inbound caller goes to your virtual receptionist. And this is my after hours. So I have less menu options. I have a different greeting in place. I can even have different settings if I want. And then for holidays, I can first offer the call to basically anywhere in the system, right? Typically a user, a group, a queue, potentially a specific device, right? A particular phone, or even just a media file saying, hey, we're closed for the holiday. The last option, which is what is currently selected, is skip to voicemail, where basically a call comes in and I'm sending it to this voicemail box. Whether or not I have a greeting there that's appropriate for the holiday, up to you. You'd have to set that up on the voicemail box. And then click on Save Changes. Main conference number. You can have multiple conference room numbers if you want. Just buy a new or add from spare. You can also have a custom text-to-speech greeting if you want. You just click Enable and type in the greeting you want. Even if you leave this off, the system will say, welcome to the conference, and prompt the inbound caller with conference room number and for the PIN number. The main fax box number, you can only have one main fax box number, right? So once I have one here, I don't have the option to add from spare or buy new, but I can edit the fax box. So here, inbound notification email, you enter an email address here. This email address gets sent an email every time a fax comes in. They also get an email on a failed fax attempt. So for instance, someone calls my fax box number from their cell phone, right? They hear fax tones, they hang up. I would get an email saying there was a failed inbound fax attempt. Now, they'd have the date, the time, phone numbers involved, and sometimes it'll come up as, phone number, say wireless number. So then I know, okay, that was someone who accidentally dialed my fax number. Otherwise, you'd want to, if you recognize the number and you're supposed to get a fax from them, you'd want to call them to find out what's going on, and or let them know it didn't come through. The email permissions, this is for outbound faxing, right? And it's designed to put your company's email domain here. So anyone at VirtualPBX, they can send a fax out from this account, even if they're not a user on the account, right? They just need the account realm, and then they can send out, right? So here are the instructions, basically. All right, auto attendance. So for submenuing, right, English and Spanish or whatever, or for a standalone business. So up here at the top, you click Add Attendant. You got to give it a name, give it an extension number, and then click Create Attendant. The extension number is not something your customers would likely ever know, but your staff members could use it to transfer calls to it. Like, for instance, if a Spanish customer came to me and I'm like, I don't speak Spanish, I can understand some, I would transfer them to, what was that, 9012 or 9002, excuse me, right, to go to my Spanish speaking attendant. And because that attendant would have a greeting in Spanish, but it would also then route to staff members who speak Spanish. Whereas here under walking the dog, right? So this is standard after you created an attendant. It starts off as saying it's unavailable main menu, meaning it's a standalone attendant, right? If I click on it, it says available main menu. That means it's a submenu option, right? It can show up under my main number. Attendants can have their own phone numbers. They can have multiple phone numbers if you want, right? Just buy or add from spare. Here's the extension number, right? You can add additional if you need to. Under settings, you have a little wrench icon. You have open hours, after hours, and holidays. This matches what we set up under the main number. I don't remember if I said it before, but auto attendance is a plan-specific feature. So if you don't see it on your account, you'd want to talk to our services team to see about what it takes to upgrade to get it. All right, devices shows all the devices on the account. Green means it's registered, so that means we can send calls to that device. Red is unregistered. We don't know if that means they're not logged in, a cable's not plugged in, or they're having some sort of network problem. If you turn a device off over here under enable, right, it turns black. All right, you can add devices here, but again, the main restriction is for adding the soft phone, you can only add a third-party soft phone. All right, so let's get the warning message. Right here, I don't have that option to say that where it says use third-party application to flip it to say use VirtualPBX application. So on the devices tab, when adding a soft phone, you're only adding a third-party soft phone. Under a little wrench icon here, for audio, for the VirtualPBX soft phone, you want to make use of Opus. If we go down to any physical device, even if you're using a soft phone credentials for a physical device, under audio, you want to make sure G711U and G711A are selected. External caller ID, you can set up a different phone number for the external caller ID for a particular device if you want to. That's what I'll always use. Under advanced E911, right, this allows you to set the phone number for E911 purposes only. So when they dial 911, this is the phone number that shows, and this is the address that shows. All right, the greetings manager shows all your media files on the account. All right, you got the name of it, the source, TTS, text to speech. Upload means you uploaded the file, and recording means you recorded it over the phone. This column here allows you to play the file directly in your browser. If for some reason that doesn't work, we have the download column here. So you can download the file to your device and listen to it on your computer or tablet's native media player. And the little wrench icon allows you to change the name. All right, so right, and then save changes. So that way, when I look at any of the pull downs, it's a little bit easier to see or recognize. Oh, also under the wrench icon, that's where you can remove a greeting. Oops. Numbers starts off all your numbers in use, basically shows you where your numbers are assigned. You can't unassign them here. You can adjust the little gear icon, so the caller ID, E911 are prepend. Spare numbers are the numbers you're not using. So if you want to remove numbers from your account, you would want to make sure they're a spare number first. And you click on the box in front of the number. So we'll just do it on this one. And you see now I have the option to delete up here just showed up. I click on that. I click delete numbers to confirm. And now I have less numbers on my account. I can bind numbers here, right? Local toll free, it just adds them as additional spare numbers. So not assigned to anything. Port, let's start the port process. You just give it a name. Choose local toll free, who's next. Now this doesn't want you to upload a PDF copy of your bill dated within the last 30 days. Then there's a bunch of things to fill out after that. You'll have the option or the opportunity to download a blank letter of agency or LOA, and then upload a completed and signed LOA. Right? The LOA information should match what your current carrier has on file. So if you're moving a number from AT&T to VirtualPBX, this is the process that you would use. But on the LOA, right, when asked for the company name and the address, it should match what AT&T has on file for you. It does need a signature, right? Digital signature file is fine, or you can print it out, sign it, and scan it back in and upload it, right? Typing your name twice gets a rejection, printing your name twice, rejection, and that just means it delays when your port will complete. Generally speaking, toll-free numbers take about a full week to complete the port, unless there's problems. Local numbers average 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes they're faster. If there is a problem, we double check to make sure there wasn't a typo or an alternate address information, for example. But if we go through and there's nothing that we can see that's wrong, then we let you know, hey, we're getting a rejection for this reason. We don't always get specifics, right? We might get address mismatch, right? They're not going to, the other carrier may not necessarily tell us that the street number was wrong or the zip code was wrong. But basically at that point, you'd want to contact your current carrier and find out what information is needed to port out the number. Get that to us, and then we would update the request. Voicemail boxes shows all your voicemail boxes on the account. If there's an entry under the user column, right, that means it was a voicemail box that was created with the user at the same time. The others were created up here by clicking up Add Voicemail Box. You give it a name, a voicemail box number, and a PIN number, and then you click on Create Voicemail Box. Right, so like so. And then once it's created, under Greetings, you can use a pull down to select an already established media file, or you can upload a new media file, right? .wav.mp3, right? Or with the basic settings, you can call in and record over the phone, right? Now, the media file, right? That's your default message that's going to play. If you select something in temporary and media at the same time, the temporary file plays, right? And the media file won't play until you send temporary back to none, right? Temporary is for like the out of office vacation message. Recipients, your user voicemail boxes have a built-in recipient, right? The email address used for login. Otherwise, you can click Add New Recipient and then enter the email address. If you need to add multiple, you just click the Add button here, give you a new row, add the next email address. And once you're done, click on Save Changes. And then options. So once you have a media file in place and a recipient in place, right, click on Already Set Up. And then you can double check to make sure that attached messages to email. And if you need to, if delete after notification needs to be checked. Text forward, new feature. This allows you to have texts that come into a specific phone number be forwarded to email or to webhook. Right, so you would click on add number at the top here. I'm just going to expand on this. Right, so you see here I added this number, and I chose to have it go to, actually here, it'll be easier on, right, choose a phone number on the account, choose an email address or a webhook, not both, right, one or the other, and then click on text forward. So if you choose an email address, whenever a text comes into this phone number, it gets sent to this email address, right? If I had a webhook, then text to this phone number would go to the webhook and whatever you set up on that webhook. All right, call logs shows your call history on the account. You have today, this week, and this month. Green arrows to the right, excuse me, are an inbound call. And if you click on it, you can see the first leg is the inbound leg, right? Call coming into the system. The second leg is a call going from the system to the user. So in this case, it's going to this soft phone, and they got a recovery on time or expire error, meaning there's a network issue going on there. All right, so if we see this one here, call came in and I see normal clearing, meaning call ended normally. So normal clearing is what you want to see because as far as the system is concerned, the call ended like it should, right? Anything else, there was some sort of issue of a type or another. Now, you can download any of these, just downloads as a CSV file. So if you're good with spreadsheets, you can get some more data about your calls. Custom allows you to do a custom date range. So if I go back to June, it's probably not going to have very much. The system will let you go back up to 12 months. If you need to go back further, you need to contact our support team and we have to create an escalation for you. Our engineers can go back up to 18 months total. After that, the data is not available. Little fire hydrant icon here, or fire extinguisher, excuse me. This will create an email for you addressed to support@virtualpbx.com and will include the technical details. Please give us context. We're not always going to be able to recognize what the issue was based off of the technical details, because sometimes it just says normal clearing and we don't know that you had an audio issue. All right, so that is the dashboard. So next up is blacklists, which is an included feature. This allows you to create a list of phone numbers that you're blocking from reaching your system. You would click over here on the right to edit blacklists. Click on add to create a new list, right? So you need to give it a name and then choose if you're blocking anonymous calls or not, right? So, and that just means the call comes in. If it's not presenting a valid inbound caller ID, right? So it says anonymous. If you leave this off, that means they come through. If you turn it on, they get blocked. Beyond that, you come here and add number. You put +1 area code and phone number. No spaces, dashes, or parentheses. Keep clicking add and additional phone numbers until you're done. And then once you're done, click on save. And then you want to go back to settings. And then you want to make sure your list is on the right under selected. Right? So you can, and normally it starts off like that. So you may need to click and drag and then click update. And even if you don't have to click and drag, make sure you click update. Faxes, this is your fax manager. This is included in your system. You starts off on inbound calls. You can choose the fax box, or inbound faxes, excuse me. You choose the fax box on the account. Shows you the date and the time, the phone numbers involved, number of pages. You can download the file. If you put a check mark here, you can also decide to remove it. All right, outbound faxes, again, you need to choose the fax box. Basically, success, that's a good thing. Right, failure, that means we had a problem communicating with the other device in some fashion. Sometimes when you mouse over the failed, it will give you an idea. Otherwise, you have to click on the little detail icon at the far right. Status, obviously it failed. And yeah, unfortunately, no further information. But sometimes you get things like user busy, meaning when we tried to fax it, we always got a busy tone. The system will retry a fax on its own 3 times. Email to fax logs. If you see a problem here, yeah. So if you see a problem here, that means the system had a problem processing a request, right? Unlike under the outbound faxes, no problem processing the request, just a problem with the other device or communicating with the other device. But here, there's a problem. So you click on the little eyeball icon at the far right, and you see, oh, the problem was no valid attachments. It could be the person forgot to include an attachment. It could be they attached something that was not a PDF or a TIFF. The number manager, this just takes you back to your spare number page. The reports, this is for advanced reporting. This is a plan-specific feature, allows you to create your own reports. If you go to the show notes, you want to look at the advanced report demo. That will give you an idea of what can be done there. And if you're interested in having this, then you need to talk to our account services team. Voicemails, this is included feature, goes to your voicemail manager. You can get to any voicemail box on the account. And when you do so, you can see the voicemails. You can see the date, the time, phone numbers involved. You can download the file. You can play it back. As an admin, if you put a check mark here, you can move it to a different voicemail box as well as change its status. Call center, this opens up a new tab and takes you to callcenter.virtualpbx.com. This is the call queues. or ACD queues. For more information, do you want to look at the ACD Queues Pro demo? Queues are advanced versions of groups, right? So groups only have those couple routing options. Queues have routing options like round robin, which will equalize out over time. Most idle, right? Whoever's been waiting the longest for a call gets the next call that comes in. There's a couple other options. Um, Also, with the call center, managers can eavesdrop in on a call, right? So they can listen to an agent to make sure everything's going right, and if necessary, whisper to the agent to help them out, or even barge in if they need to take over the call. The call center also allows your staff members to like log themselves in and out of the queue or mark themselves away, right? So like beginning of the day, they log in, they can take calls, they make themselves ready. Lunchtime, they mark themselves as away. So they're still in the queue, but they're not going to be offered calls while they're at lunch. Dynamic caller ID, this is a plan-specific feature. This allows you to create rules to change your outbound caller ID. So if we click on this one here, right, you just give it a name. You choose a phone number on the account. Let's see if I have so I have this far white number here. And then in this case, I have them using the feature code *408, will automatically change their outbound caller ID from their VoIP phones to this 408 number, right? So it looks like a local number to whoever they're calling. Where if I go here to Vegas, right, again, gave it a name. I chose a 702 number on the account. In this case, I just gave it a rule saying, hey, whenever my staff members dial a 702 area code phone number from their VoIP phones, the system will automatically do it for them, right? No entering an additional set of keys. Monitor, another plan-specific feature. This allows you to see the status of your staff members or their devices. You see everything, or who's available, who's busy. Up here, you can see active inbound calls. Each active inbound call will have its own little box and show who they're speaking to. If you have any parked calls, they'll show up here with the phone number and the parking spot number. Recording Manager, this will open up a new tab and take you to recordings.virtualpbx.com. That uses your Dash login information to get logged in, and that's where you would view your call recordings. You can download them, listen to them, delete them, etc. Webhooks, another plan-specific feature. This allows you to essentially program a way for your Dash account to link or be associated with other software. Right, so you would click on new webhook, enter out basically this information to create the hook, and then you need something on the other side for it to hook onto. So in our show notes, you want to look at the Introduction to Zapier webinar. That's going to give you some ideas of what we've done. You can also go to developer.virtualpbx.com to see sample code of what we have done in terms of linking Dash to other software. And then lastly, we have the user portal. So every user on your account has access to their own user portal. It defaults them to their voicemail tabs, so they can see their new voicemails, right? They can play them back, they can download them. Just click on the box to change their status. Call history, they can view their call history, they can change the date range to filter it down. The fax tab only works for users with their own fax box, right? But it would show their fax history. Contact list basically shows everything on the account, right? So other users, groups, attendance, etc. So that way it makes it easier for your staff members to transfer calls. This is not something they can edit, right? They can't add something into it or delete anything to it. They can basically just change the sort order. Conference tab, this is for users that have the conference feature enabled. Over here on the right is where they can change their conference room number PIN numbers for themselves and for any participants. Then they can choose if people are started muted or if they start deafened, as well as playing entry and exit tones. While in a conference, the little plus sign here, this allows you to invite other Dash users to a conference. Then you can lock a conference. You can mute everybody, unmute everybody, or end the conference call. Also, while in a conference, each moderator and participant has their own little box. So moderators can mute a specific person or kick out a specific person. And the settings and devices tab. So right here, this is where your staff members can enable call forwarding on their own. Right, they just put a little check mark here, put +1 area code and phone number, and then click on Save Changes. Again, if they have their own cell phone as a device on their user, they don't need to make use of call forwarding. And then they click uncheck it and save to disable it. And that is everything. I haven't seen any questions pop up, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. I thank you for your time today. Again, we record these trainings, so you can always come back to it again. And also, under our business SMS webinar series, we have a new one coming up this Thursday. So again, thank you for your time. We'll be back next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific.